right, we are going to dive into a story a lot of people are digging into online. Even my daughter interested in this story, so it's for everybody. Disney is saying to avoid reinforcing stereotypes, they will be taking a different approach to their live-action remake of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Now, this decision comes in response to pretty heavy criticism from actor Peter Dinklage. In a podcast interview, the Emmy Award-winning actor called this a, quote, backward story about dwarfs living together in a cave. Are there some stories, Samantha, I'm going to start with you. Are there some stories that we should just stop retelling?
I think that if we're going to make up stories, like, why stop at making up inclusive ways to tell? I think with this story in particular, or like even if you look at Game of Thrones, there were dragons there. So it makes sense that, like, if you can do dragons, why can't we do social justice stuff or have inclusive and equitable portrayals of characters? And I think with Snow White, it has been done in inclusive ways before. There's Sydney White, which is like this. I grew up watching it. It's like it's a retelling of Snow White, but with Amanda Bynes, and it's not harming anyone. It doesn't hurt anybody to tell that story and still make the wholesome sort of vibe without, damaging stereotypes or using stereotypes to damage things further. So I don't know. It can be done, and you can't be,
Lee, does it matter that it seems, though, that the source material always seems to be the same, though?
It does. And I do think it's okay to repeat old stories, but you have to take responsibility when you're doing it. So absolutely, there would have been people who had dwarfism or people with disabilities at the time. I don't know exactly what era Snow White's trying to be, but there would have been people who had dwarfism at the time, and they probably would have been ostracized. So if we're going to update the story, perhaps we can represent the idea that folks live separately because of that oppression. But I think the big point that Peter Dinklage is making is the idea of 7 guys living in a cave and how that produces dwarf for people with dwarfism as being like sexless and childlike. I think that's a huge problem, the portrayal of a lot of marginalized people. Maybe 7 guys living in a cave can be sexy, but an adult portrayal, I don't think that's what they're going for, but an adult portrayal shows people in relationships and people with children and people in community and family. So if Disney goes that way, I hope they take on that challenge and they do it right by showing people with dwarfism as whole people. I mean, all marginalized people want whole representations. Like, we want our characters to make out in the Hallmark Christmas movies too, as queer and trans people. So we're all watching for that. So I hope they do it right.
Yeah, and
I hear you, Lee. And sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to add that, like, it's this idea of, like, what's the dominant trait that you're portraying when you're, like, you can't do Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and have the dominant trait of the Seven Dwarfs being that they have dwarfism. In the same way that you can't make the dominant trait of any character just like their one identity. Like, we're complex and diverse people, and we should be portrayed as that. And just giving it that one storyline and being like, that's enough, that's diversity. Like, that's not going to work.
Well, that's interesting you're talking about traits, though. It's interesting you're talking about traits with respect to these characters, because if their dominant trait, number 1, is dwarfism, the second trait is happy, jolly, sleepy, dopey. Yes. I can't remember all of their... But so to go back to what you were saying, Lee, in terms of certain stereotypes and almost infantilizing these characters, the origin story is already... Look, I have to admit, and I don't think I'm alone, when I was growing up, I didn't see it to be problematic. And probably I realized it to be problematic too late in my life. I was too grown by the time. And so that's on me. And the thing is, but we're now supposedly in a better place. And you're seeing all kinds of problems, layers with the origin story. So the point is that, like, if you're going to go and change this origin story, are you going to give these characters new names? Like, are we throwing out the happy and the dopey and sleep and whatever their names are? And if you do that, then what else are you changing? And then, like, you're changing so much, why not just like write a new story?
I was going to go there. That's where I was going to go, Lainey, because I was like, I have a 7-year-old daughter, and if they're trying to cast a wide net to get the nostalgia factor with the parents' generation and retell a story for 2022 for perhaps my daughter's generation, there's a part of me that says, can we just like move on to maybe new stories? How about that? Can we just do new stories? Let's grow.
Yes.